America's national parks. Our country's places set aside for reflection, recreation, enjoyment of nature. These pristine mountains, beautiful forests, and rushing rivers have been enjoyed by millions of Americans. Our national parks. This is their history.
Most people have been to a national park in their lifetime. There's one in every state except for Delaware. But most people have no idea who to credit with the establishment of these lands. To find out, we have to go all the way back to the 1830s, and artist George Catlin.
Catlin attended the prestigious law school Tapping Reeve and James Gould, but became famous as an artist. His particular expertise was painting Native Americans in their natural surroundings. On a trip to the Dakotas in 1832, he worried about the impact of America's westward expansion on the environment. They might be preserved, he wrote, by some great protecting policy of government. In a magnificent park, a nation's park, containing man and beast, in all the wild freshness of their nature's beauty. Catlin is widely regarded as the first proponent of the national parks system.
32 years passed before there was any real progress on national parks. In 1864, the United States Congress donated Yosemite Valley to the state of California to be preserved as a state park, which could not be developed or sold. The purpose was to preserve land for future generations and give the public a place to experience nature.
Henry David Thoreau, a famous abolitionist and poet, lived in a hut next to Walden Pond in Concord, Massachusetts, for 2 years, from 1845 to 1847. He wrote of his experiences. Why should not we have our national preserves, in which the bear and the panther, and some even of the hunter race, may still exist, and not be civilized off the face of the earth? Or shall we, like the villains, rub them all up, poaching on our own national domain? In a posthumous biography of Thoreau, Ralph Waldo Emerson, who was Thoreau's lifelong friend and fellow author, wrote, "He was bred to no profession. He never married. He lived alone. He never went to church. He never voted. He refused to pay a tax to the state. He ate no flesh, and he drank no wine. He never knew the use of tobacco. And, though a naturalist, he used neither trap."
Frederick Law Olmsted, the founder of landscape architecture, argued that the ordinary working person should enjoy a balance between the busy city life and the beauty of the natural world. Olmsted was not, however, a proponent of complete wilderness. He said it would be appropriate for parks to have restaurants, hotels, and other comforts so that enjoyment of nature was possible in an easy way. However, he said, these conveniences should provide no interference with the process of appreciation.
For information on the conflict of use between preservation and recreation, we contacted Professor Joseph Sachs, an environmental law professor at UC Berkeley and notable expert on national parks. He told us that beginning in 1806, the land around Niagara Falls was sold to private ownership, and by the middle of the century, the consequences were clear. Much of the native foliage had been stripped out and the lands leveled to take advantage of the water power. The area around the falls was lined with shops, factories, and swindlers. By the 1860s, tourists could not even see the falls without paying for the view. This serves as an example of what can happen when magnificent land falls into private ownership.
After Yosemite was donated in 1864, Olmsted was appointed the director of the park. In 1870, an expedition to explore the Yellowstone wilderness was launched. The expedition was headed by Henry Washburn, Nathaniel Lanford, and Lieutenant Gustavus Stone. The group of 19 men explored the Yellowstone region and gave names to many sites there now, such as Old Faithful and Mount Washburn. The expedition brought back accounts of the enchanted land they described as home to geysers, canyons, forests, wildlife, and waterfalls.
The group wondered how this unique land could be preserved so that all Americans could witness its beauty. Cornelius Hedges, a judge from Montana and a member of the expedition, had the opinion that any one person or corporation should not own this magnificent land. It should be instead, he said, set aside and preserved as an area for future generations to enjoy. They presented this to Congress on March 1, 1872. President Grant signed the bill that made Yellowstone the first national park in the country and in the entire world.
After Yellowstone was made the first national park, in the next 28 years, 5 new parks were established: Sequoia, Yosemite, Mount Rainier, Crater Lake, Glacier. The railroad system aided in bringing tourists to the park, making it easier than ever before for those who lived in the city to enjoy nature.
In 1906, the Antiquities Act was passed. This act allowed presidents to set aside historic structures such as national monuments, which could be protected from development. Many of these, such as the Grand Canyon, were eventually made into national parks.
However, there were more clashes between usage and preservation. In 1913, a dam was planned to be built in Hetch Hetchy Valley, which is in Yosemite. Some conservationists, who believed that the public should have a regulated right to use the national parks, supported this because it would provide power and irrigation to some nearby communities. Congress ignored the opposition, which included park supporter John Muir, and approved the dam be built. This created a problem for the government because there was no official group to represent the national parks. Stephen T. Mather, the Assistant Secretary of the Interior, spoke in favor of a National Parks Bureau. Mather complained to the Secretary of the Interior, Franklin K. Lane, and then was made the special advisor on all parks matters. Mather and his assistant, Horace Albright, decided the best thing to do was to campaign about the value of national parks as economic institutions. In 1915, a PR campaign was launched.
17 railroad companies guaranteed funding to the government. Their reasoning was that if there was a National Park Service, they would get more business and it would be good for them economically. A national parks portfolio was created. The portfolio laid out a case why national parks were important and was given to members of Congress along with several influential citizens. Mather preached about the economic value of national parks and what they could do for tourism. His ideas were supported with articles in National Geographic, the Saturday Evening Post, and many other magazines.
In 1916, there were 14 national parks and 21 national monuments, but still no governing body. Woodrow Wilson's Interior Department ordered the Army to send troops to the California parks and Yellowstone. The Army established park roads and buildings, as well as regulations on hunting. On the other hand, monuments did not receive many of these benefits. On August 25, 1916, President Woodrow Wilson signed into law a bill that established the National Park Service, which would be under the jurisdiction of the Department of the Interior. Stephen T. Mather, the Assistant to the Secretary of the Interior, was appointed the first director of the National Park Service. He was appointed in 1917 and served 13 years until he died. During World War II, there was tremendous pressure on the National Park Service to allow timber in Olympic National Park to be harvested. The military would use it to build planes. Scrap metal dealers were interested in the historic cannons at National Park battlefields and forts. Most of these demands were avoided when other resources were found, and most parks were untouched. After the war, Interior Secretary Oscar L. Chapman supported the building of more dams in Dinosaur National Monument in Colorado and Utah. National Park Service Director Newton Drury resigned in 1951 due to the frustration he felt. In his opinion, damming more park rivers was a violation of the park's mission to preserve land. The long battle ended with the preservationists winning and Congress blocking the attempt at the dams being built.
Today, the National Parks Service stands strong. The National Parks Service currently oversees 392 areas, 58 of which are national parks. George Catlin's idea of preservation has greatly impacted our nation and opened the doors for skiers, hikers, campers, photographers, and survivalists.
These parks and monuments are very important to all of us. Not only do they keep sites of historic and scientific interest safe and preserve amazing and jaw-dropping land from development, they stand for something more American than that. National parks are an innovation in recreation. They allow people to slow down and take in nature. They give all of our lives more meaning. National parks, recreation and preservation.